The Galactic Senate Chamber was a monument to diplomacy, a place where species from across the stars gathered as equals. But today, it was about to witness an unprecedented crisis. The issue? A chair. Not just any chair, a human-sized one. The Senate prided itself on accommodating all life forms. There were floating cushions for the Zelvari, water-filled pods for the Milax, and even perches for the avian Jictal. But when the humans arrived, nobody expected seating to spark an interstellar conflict. The Cathari, a proud reptilian species, valued strength above all else. Their seating reflected their status. The larger the chair, the greater the respect. High-ranking Cathari sat on towering thrones, making it clear who ruled the room. Then came the human envoy, James Carter. His assigned seat, designed for the average galactic diplomat, was too big. He climbed in, adjusted himself, and his feet dangled. To the Cathari, this was humiliating. In their culture, sitting in a chair too large meant you were weak, unworthy, and beneath notice. A hush fell over the chamber. The Cathari delegation exchanged glances, tails twitching in agitation. High Chancellor Vraxis narrowed his eyes. This could not stand. Humans wanted a seat at the table. They would have to earn it. The silence in the Galactic Senate chamber stretched uncomfortably. 100 different species watched as one small chair threw the entire room into chaos. James Carter, humanity's representative, shifted awkwardly in his oversized seat. His feet still dangled, just barely brushing the floor. The moment had already become a diplomatic disaster. Across the chamber, High Chancellor Vraxis of the Cathari seethed. The Cathari were warriors. Their culture revolved around dominance, status, and the power of appearances. Their thrones were symbols of strength, the size directly correlating to a leader's influence. Sitting in an improperly sized seat was more than a minor embarrassment. It was an open declaration of inferiority. And now, before the entire Senate, a human, a species the Cathari already viewed with suspicion, sat like a child at the adults' table. A low growl rumbled through the Cathari delegation. The tension in the air grew thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. James, oblivious to the implications, let out a small chuckle. "Guess this chair wasn't made for humans, huh?" He adjusted himself again, wiggling uncomfortably. It was the wrong thing to say. Vraxis slammed his clawed fist onto the table. The impact echoed through the chamber. Several delegates flinched. The avian Jictal ruffled their feathers in alarm. The amphibious Ralzik recoiled into their water pods. "This is an insult," Vraxis hissed, his scaled crest flaring. "Do you mock us, human?" James blinked. "What? No, I just... Enough!" Vraxis cut him off, rising to his full height. His ornate gold-trimmed throne stood nearly twice the size of James's chair. The power imbalance was glaring. The Cathari leader pointed a taloned finger at the human envoy. "You have shamed yourself before the entire Senate. This is a disgrace." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Trinari, known for their meticulous diplomacy, whispered amongst themselves. The Voltari, a hive-minded species, clicked their mandibles in unison. Even the usually unflappable Zelvari, whose amorphous bodies floated in their containment fields, pulsed with concern. James's eyes darted around, confused. "Okay, seriously, what's happening right now? It's just a chair." The Cathari delegation bristled. To them, this was more than a misunderstanding. The human had openly displayed weakness before the entire galactic community. And worse, he had laughed about it. Vraxis's voice was cold. "In Cathari culture, status is everything. Your seating is a measure of your worth. You sit too small. You sit beneath us." James ran a hand through his hair. "Right, so I just need a bigger chair?" Vraxis's eyes narrowed. "A bigger chair will not change the humiliation you have brought upon yourself." James exhaled slowly. "Okay, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let's take a step back No. Vraxis slammed his fist down again. The only way to reclaim your honor is through the Cathari way. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. James frowned. And that would be... Vraxis's fangs gleamed as he spoke. Trial by combat. James Carter blinked. I'm sorry, did you just say trial by combat? Over a chair? Across the chamber, the Cathari delegation stood rigid, their scales shimmering under the Senate's artificial lighting. High Chancellor Vraxis's golden eyes burned with intensity. This is not about a chair, he growled. It is about respect, and you have none. James resisted the urge to sigh. He had barely been in the Senate for a full standard cycle, and already he had somehow offended an entire species over furniture. The Trinari diplomat, a multi-limbed creature covered in bioluminescent patterns, chittered anxiously. High Chancellor, surely there is another way. Vraxis snapped his gaze to the Trinari. Are you suggesting that tradition be ignored? That honor be cast aside? The Trinari wisely said nothing. James pinched the bridge of his nose. All right, let's just clarify something. You're saying the only way I can fix this is by fighting someone? Not just someone, Vraxis said. Me. A stunned silence fell over the Senate. Several species exchanged nervous glances. The Cathari were not just warriors. They were renowned for their combat prowess. Their entire civilization was built on dominance, on proving one's strength through direct confrontation. Vraxis was not just a leader. He was the undefeated champion of the Cathari dueling pits. James let out a slow breath. Huh. The Vultari ambassador, an insectoid diplomat with reflective chitin, clicked its mandibles. Human. I strongly advise against this. The Cathari do not fight for sport. They fight to assert dominance. If you lose, humanity's standing in the Senate will plummet. James turned his attention to Vraxis. And if I win? A ripple of shocked whispers spread through the chamber. The idea was laughable. No one had ever beaten a Cathari in single combat. Vraxis grinned, exposing rows of serrated teeth. If by some miracle you defeat me, you will have earned the right to sit wherever you please. James crossed his arms. And that would be the end of this? Vraxis nodded. It would, but you will not win. The Senate chamber buzzed with anticipation. This was unprecedented. No species had ever challenged the Cathari directly and lived. To tell the tale, the Trinari diplomat spoke up again. There is still time to decline, human. No one would blame you. James glanced at the ridiculous too-small chair. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't some battle-hardened super soldier. But he knew one thing for sure. If humanity backed down now, they'd never live it down. James gave Vraxis a lopsided grin. All right, Lizard Man, you're on. The Senate had an official dueling ground, a vast circular arena housed within the station's lower levels. It hadn't been used in decades. Now, it was packed with delegates. News of the fight had spread like wildfire. Every species wanted to witness the spectacle of a human going up against the deadliest warrior in the Senate. James stood at one end of the sand-covered floor, rolling his shoulders and stretching. He had changed into the closest thing to combat gear he could find, a simple, flexible bodysuit provided by the Senate security team. Across from him, Vraxis loomed. The Cathari leader was dressed in ceremonial battle armor, polished obsidian, plates that gleamed under the harsh lights. He flexed his clawed fingers, eager for blood. A Senate official stepped forward. The rules are simple. The duel continues until one combatant yields or is unable to fight. James frowned. Define unable to fight. The official hesitated. Unconscious or worse. Great, just great. Vraxis cracked his knuckles. I will make this quick, human. You should not suffer long. James smirked. Let's find out. The official raised a hand. Begin. Vraxis charged. He moved like a thunderbolt, closing the distance in an instant. His claws lashed out. James barely dodged. He twisted away, feeling the air slice as those talons missed him by mere inches. The crowd roared. Vraxis was fast. Too fast. James had expected power, maybe brute strength. But this was something else. The Cathari lunged again, swiping in a deadly arc. James ducked, barely avoiding a decapitating blow. He stumbled back, heart pounding. "Think, Carter. You're not stronger. You're not faster. So what do you have?" His eyes darted across the arena, then it hit him. The Cathari were used to overwhelming their enemies, to crushing their opponents through sheer dominance. But what if they weren't the ones in control? James took a slow breath. Then he smiled. "Vraxis," snarled. "Do you find this funny, human?" James shrugged. "A little." And then he ran. James ran. Not in fear. Not to escape. He ran because it was the one thing no one expected. The Cathari fought with dominance, with overwhelming force. They expected a clash, a battle of strength against strength, but James wasn't giving them that. He ducked, weaved, and stayed just out of reach as Vraxis's claws slashed through empty air. The Cathari High Chancellor was fast, but James was smarter. The crowd roared in confusion. The Voltari ambassador clicked its mandibles. "Is he fleeing?" The Trinari diplomat squinted. "No, he's baiting him." Vraxis lunged again, frustration in his golden eyes. He had never had to chase an opponent before. James slid under a strike, spun around, and landed a solid kick to the back of Vraxis's knee. The Cathari staggered. A ripple of shock ran through the audience. James grinned. "Not so easy when they don't stand still, huh?" Vraxis let out a guttural snarl. "Enough!" With a roar, he lunged forward with blinding speed. His claws flashed. James twisted aside at the last second. But this time, he wasn't just dodging. He grabbed Vraxis's outstretched wrist and used the Cathari's own momentum against him. A human maneuver. A combat trick from Earth. Judo. Vraxis's own strength sent him hurtling forward. The High Chancellor crashed into the ground. The arena fell silent. James took a few steps back, keeping his stance loose. "You're strong, Vraxis, but strength isn't everything." Vraxis rose slowly. His golden eyes burned with something new, not just anger, respect. The Cathari flicked his claws, shaking off the dust. "You fight differently," James smirked. "Yeah, humans are full of surprises." Vraxis exhaled. He shifted his stance. "Good. Then let's make this a real fight." James cracked his knuckles. "Gladly." The fight continued, but now it was different. Vraxis no longer lunged blindly. He adjusted, adapting to James's evasive tactics. He was learning, and that was a problem. James's stamina was good, but the Cathari were built for war. If this dragged on, he wouldn't last. He needed to end it. Now, Vraxis attacked again, but this time, James moved in. Instead of dodging, he closed the distance. It caught the Cathari off guard. His balance wavered, and James struck. A feint to the left. Vraxis followed. James dropped low and swept his legs out from under him. The Cathari fell. James didn't hesitate. He locked an arm around Vraxis's throat. A chokehold, a technique as old as time. Simple, brutal, effective. Vraxis struggled, clawed at James's grip, but James held firm. Seconds passed. Then Vraxis tapped out. The Senate erupted. James let go and stepped back, chest heaving. He had won. Vraxis coughed but laughed. A deep, rumbling sound. He stood towering over James, but this time his gaze held something new. Respect. The High Chancellor raised his voice so all could hear. "Humanity has proven itself. They are not prey. They are not weak. They are worthy." He turned to James and gave a slow, deliberate bow. The Cathari never bowed, and just like that, the war over a seat was over, and humanity had won its place at the table. The moment Vraxis tapped out, the Galactic Senate descended into chaos. The Cathari never lost. They certainly never yielded, and yet their own High Chancellor had submitted to a human. James stood, chest rising and falling, sweat dripping from his brow. He had expected some kind of reaction, but this, senators bickered, ambassadors clutched their data slates. A Zelvari delegate whispered to their neighbor, "If the Cathari submit to them, what does that mean for the rest of us?" The Voltari ambassador clicked his mandibles. "It means we may have underestimated them." James knew this was a pivotal moment. He had won the duel, but now came the real battle, the battle for perception. If the galactic community saw humanity as too strong, too unpredictable, they might unite against Earth. If they saw humanity as weak, undeserving, then the Cathari loss would be dismissed as a fluke. But if humanity played this just right, this could be the greatest power move in galactic history. James stepped forward. The noise died down. All eyes were on him. He took a deep breath. Then he spoke. This was never about a seat. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. James continued. This was about what that seat represents. He turned to Vraxis, nodding. The Cathari challenged us because they believed humans weren't worthy, that we were soft, fragile. His gaze swept across the assembled species. How many of you thought the same thing? Silence. James smirked. You all saw what happened today. Strength isn't just muscle. It's not just size or claws or armor plating. He gestured toward Vraxis. The Cathari understand battle better than most, and they respect one thing. Above all else, victory. James turned fully to Vraxis. So tell me, Chancellor, did I win? Vraxis's golden eyes narrowed. A tense moment passed. Then the Cathari nodded. Yes, a ripple of shock. James pressed on. Then by your own traditions, humanity has earned its place. Not because we demanded it, not because of politics, but because we proved we belong. He folded his arms. And if that's not enough for the rest of you, well, he shrugged, we're not going anywhere. Silence. Then, slowly, a rumble of approval. The Trinari diplomat was the first to stand and clap. The Voltari followed, clicking their mandibles in applause. One by one, the Senate acknowledged humanity's victory. And just like that, the seat was theirs. After the meeting, James expected tension. He had embarrassed the Cathari in front of the entire galaxy. They had every reason to hold a grudge. So when Vraxis himself approached, James braced for a fight. Instead, the High Chancellor chuckled. You are a strange warrior, James Carter. James smirked. I get that a lot. Vraxis crossed his arms. You fought with honor. You won with skill. I cannot change the past, but I can shape the future. He extended a clawed hand. A Cathari offering a handshake? Unheard of. James didn't hesitate. He clasped Vraxis's arm. Vraxis leaned in. I look forward to our next battle. James grinned. So do I. The war for respect was over, and humanity had just taken its first step toward galactic dominance. The moment James Carter walked out of the Grand Senate Hall, he knew everything had changed. He had expected fallout. He had expected political maneuvering. What he didn't expect was how fast the galaxy would react. Within hours, the Cathari government issued an official declaration. The duel has been decided. The Cathari honor the outcome. Humanity has earned its place. Simple, direct. But the implications? Massive. The Cathari didn't just acknowledge their defeat, they acknowledged humanity's strength. For the first time in history, the Cathari recognized another species as a rival. The news spread like wildfire. Social feeds exploded. News. Channels ran non-stop coverage. Memes flooded the networks, a human sitting smugly in a massive Cathari throne with the caption, "One small seat for a Deathworlder." A blurry image of James mid-duel captioned, "The floor is lizard pride." Vraxis Tapping out overlaid with "Press F to pay respects." Some species celebrated humanity's victory, others panicked. One thing was clear: the political landscape had shifted. Back on Earth, the United Terran Coalition was still processing what had happened. No one had authorized James to challenge Chancellor, and yet his actions had secured humanity's first major galactic victory. The question wasn't whether to capitalize on it. It was how. Earth's ambassadors got to work. Trade deals were renegotiated, diplomatic ties strengthened, military contracts doubled overnight. Everyone wanted to understand what made humans so dangerous. Some wanted to befriend them, others wanted to prepare for the worst. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer an afterthought. Days after the duel, James received an encrypted message from Vraxis himself. The message was short: "Come to Cathar. We have much to discuss." James knew what it meant. The Cathari weren't just conceding, they were re-evaluating everything. For the first time, they saw humans as something more than an upstart species. Now they saw them as worthy competitors. And for a warrior culture like the Cathari, that was the greatest respect they could offer. The duel for a single seat had become something far greater, a symbol, a turning point. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. Now they were watching very, very carefully, because the lesson was clear. Humans didn't just want a seat at the table, they were here to stay.